survive and take a stand. Without my scores and no fast. Alright guys, so today I'm going to start a new series, sick death metal riffs, and then we're just going to talk about, a lot of this stuff is going to be really useful, especially for, people to understand historically. And then, like I said, I know a lot about music theory, so for me to do this for you, right, it's really, it should be really great. So I have sort of formed my own death metal band, and I do everything right here. Great news, tomorrow I'm going to get a double bass pedal to fit in my kit, right? Because I have a kit here, if you've been following this channel. So I've been wanting to pull the trigger on that for a while, right? And then now, after I did a lot of research, because this is the kind of stuff where, I play in E-kit, Roland electronic kit, and then, trying to find the right pedal for that. And then the pad and the configuration and everything, within budget, right? So just for like about $160, I'm able to do it. Basically I'll make a separate video on that. Buy like a legitimate double bass pedal, and then just buy like a pad that plugs into my existing kit, and it's all compatible, right? So I had to do all the research on that to make sure find the right compatible one. So that's coming tomorrow, which is going to be great. So I formed my own death metal band here. Go to the first link, I will pin it. This is a song called Oppressions of Life. And the band, as of now, is called Plutocratic Denial. If you're a follower of this channel, go check it out. Give it a like. Put a comment on there so it'll get, fanned out to other people, Because unfortunately, that's how the algorithms work. So, not that I'm going to be just doing all death metal videos or anything else like that. But I did do a Motorhead video. And I know a couple of you guys saw it before I yanked it, but it came out distorted, so I had to yank it. See, this is the thing. You recorded the whole video, and then I found out that, the microphone level was too much, so it just sounds distorted. So what's the point of that? You can hardly, hear it. And so I had to basically, pull the plug on that one. So as soon as I get the double bass pedal, so this means that I don't have to do anything on the computer end. It'll just come in as a, right? The signal is split into the two pedals. So that should be good then. So I'll be able to record my next song. So check out this song. I did it all by myself here. It shows you how great, right? The cool times we live in, because, technology is so cool now that one person can do it all. Desktop metal, right? One person can do it all. So anyway. So today I want to talk about, like I said, we'll start with kind of the beginning of death metal. I guess we'll have to say it's Scream Bloody Gore. I think it came out in 1987, right? So previously I had said that I think I made a mistake, and I said that Shuldiner was only 18. So if he was 21 in 1988, so he must have been about 19, 20 years old when this came out. So, which is still pretty, amazing, right? And then obviously he had started death, as early as 83. And then 85, I showed you that, I was telling you that he was already playing shows, even before Rain and Blood had come out. So today we'll just talk about, so we'll have to start there, right? We'll have to kind of start there. So, I think we talked about some of the stuff already. I'll do another video where we'll just talk about, the history of death metal and all that stuff. But a lot of this is obviously borrowed from, thrash, right? Borrowed from thrash. And then also, other bands that are influenced by Venom, like Celtic Frost. So there's actually a story where, Kronos runs into Tom Warrior, and Warrior tells him, we're just trying to be like Venom. So he admitted to Kronos that, they're just ripping them off. So, it's kind of like if you take Black Sabbath and you mix it with Venom, and then you get, so you get rhythms like this, right? That kind of movement, Black Sabbath did that. So it's kind of like bringing them back into the mix. I'll talk about all this later on. But, as far as like death metal itself is concerned, There are no rules. It can go anywhere. It can go slow. It can go fast, right? So today I want to talk about 16th note rhythms, right? Which is cool, which is what I started out playing. This is completely different than thrash because thrash doesn't play 16th note rhythms. It tries to, it might a little bit here and there, maybe bands like Possessed, occasionally, Slayer occasionally, Metallica almost never, but they don't really get to play 16th notes. So a lot of people will claim that they play 30-second notes or 60-second notes. Well, a lot of that is not really true. Sometimes it's not true. It might be that momentarily you hit, a note, but what does this mean? Well, you have to go back to timing. So 16th note means in 1 second, you play 16 notes, right? Like this right here. This part. Right? So it's like 1/1000. I just played 16 notes right there. 1/1000. So it's like a group of 4, 4, 4, 4. If you play that all together fast. So that should be done in 1 second. 1/1000. 1/1000, right? That's 16th notes. So it's humanly impossible to play 30-second notes or 60-second notes unless you're not actually playing the note and then you're sweeping or something like that. You're going, right? And then if you're doing something like that, you can play maybe 30-second notes. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about actually playing the note. So 16 notes is possibly the most that we can do, right? And there's a lot of 16-note rhythms in death metal. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So hopefully you understood it, right? 16th note patterns means in 1 second you play 16 notes, right? Sometimes the tempo can depends on how you divide the time. So I don't want to get into the whole, that aspect of it because that's not really important to us. So if we kind of think about it as 1 second, right, for our practical purposes, so it's this right here, right? So, and then, in that rhythm, what will he do? Instead of going... then he'll just open it up. So that's the staple of death metal. It's everywhere. And it all kind of sounds the same. And this is the caveat that I talked to you about before, is that death metal is not about, death metal is just being about sick, right? Sick riffs that are kind of demonic and demented. And they kind of make you feel kind of evil, right? Maybe in a playful way, I don't know, to each person it's different. Maybe in like a horror kind of movie kind of way. But definitely the difference here between thrash and death metal is that thrash metal is more like show-offy, much like the 80s. Anything that came out in the 80s is show-offy, right? It's too much, a finesse. It's too much, hype. It's too much, you know what I mean? Right? So it's more about showing off stuff. This is not about showing off. Hence, all these 16-note rhythms, even within Leprosy, even within Scream Bloody Gore, right? They all kind of sound the same. And I told you this before. It's actually okay because we're not going for... right? We're not going for kind of that glammy kind of to impress people. That's not what this is about. Death metal is about playing riffs that that are sick, and there's going to be repetition in there, right? And already the 3 riffs that I played, there's already a lot of repetition. It all kind of sounds the same, but yet different, of course, as you know, right? Right? Thrash metal would never come up with something like that. Simply because, as I said, thrash metal is more about showing off. It's that 80s culture. So death metal, when it hit, it got rid of the... So I hate to use this term. So whatever I say, just be kind of, take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes you can't express how you feel without, without being blunt about it, right? So there's this... I didn't want to use this word, but I have to drive my point home. So there is a goofiness associated with all 80s music, as you know, right? Even with Iron Maiden, there's a goofiness associated with it. Even with, a lot of the bands. Anything that came out of the 1980s has a goofiness associated with it, right? Especially the hair metal bands, the glam bands, which we never talk about here. Not that, musically or, songwriting wise they're bad, but it's just that, that it's just the aesthetic of it. It's just that whole, show offy kind of glammy kind of thing, right? So we typically don't talk about bands like Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, or anything like that here. We only talk about sick bands, right? Like Black Sabbath, Venom, Celtic Frost, the Big Four, that kind of stuff. But even in thrash, right? Because thrash was supposed to be what? It was supposed to be, sort of the anti, hair metal, and it's just like getting down to it, right? It's kind of almost inspired by DRI, kind of that, or like hardcore even, right? Hardcore punk. It's like a completely different scene, right? It has those kind of aspects to it, kind of a stripped down approach, but it's still controlled chaos, right? Thrash. So unfortunately, thrash still has that goofiness there, right? I don't want to point out the songs. I don't want to point out the bands. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're a death metal guy, you know what I'm talking about. If you're a thrash metal guy, you have no clue what I'm talking about. You won't have a clue what I'm talking about. That's okay. Just stay in that world and that's fine, right? Um, but there's that goofiness associated. I don't want to name bands because then I don't want to come off as right, which is not cool. At the stage that we're in now, 2026, where rock is basically dead, what's the point in pointing fingers and then saying, oh, wait, that, they're like this or they're like that, right? But generally speaking, Slayer doesn't have it too much till, right, till Seasons of the Abyss. So that's why I like the first 5 Slayer albums and that's it, pretty much, right? So, or the first 4 even, right? Show No Mercy, which kind of laid the path. So a lot of the guys from Death, they said Show No Mercy is what made them play fast. Like Rick Ross said, after he heard Show No Mercy, that's when they started playing fast. Supposedly, he was saying, I was hearing in an interview, he was saying that came out like late '83 or something like that. And Metallica had came out, the Kill 'Em All came out like spring of '83 or something like that. But that's when people were like, hey, we want to play fast, right? But of course, Venom had already done it before in like the early 80s, which was what thrash was influenced by, right? So there is that sort of that thing to where, like I said, Show No Mercy, Hell Awaits is my favorite. Hell Awaits has a lot of these kind of death metal patterns, right? Some of which we'll talk about later. And then Reign in Blood, actually not my favorite. Hell Awaits is my favorite. Somehow the Reign in Blood, I don't like the production. Everybody likes it, but I don't like the production of it. It just sounds kind of, you know, I mean, it's cool. And then South of Heaven. So I guess the first 4 albums for me, right? South of Heaven. And then parts of Seasons of the Abyss, right? But eventually every band has that kind of goofiness associated with it in the riff writing, I mean, right? Or the aesthetic of it. Death metal, it basically nuked that goofiness. That's it. There is no goofiness there. So you're not going to find goofy, kind of thrashy, kind of goofy kind of riffs here. So that's the thing. So anyway, these 16th note patterns, thrash metal doesn't really play them if you count them. Because I thought Metallica did them, and then I, checked out their faster songs like Damage Incorporated, and I did the same thing I did here, and they're not. They're playing like maybe 12 notes per second. So again, to summarize this, 16 notes per second is probably about as fast as we can go, right? Anything above that, either people don't know anything about music theory, they're counting wrong, or what's happening is that they're just kind of right, tapping it, or they're kind of doing that right, arpeggiated kind of sweep, in which you're not really playing the note anyway. So for us to do this, so another important thing here, you can see I'm getting excited. I get excited when I talk about music. So another important thing here that distinguishes thrash from death metal is that in death metal, we have these 16 note rhythms that are just a staple of every song. In every song, there'll be this kind of 16 note rhythms here and there, right? Especially like around this time. From Scream Bloody Gore, Leprosy. For the band Death, that's pretty much, half of that staple. Right, half of the staple rhythms are basically, the bread and butter of it is these 16 note kind of rhythms, and you've got to, right, you've got to be able to play them. Or like, you know, like we talked about before. Right, thrash almost never goes that fast. So you've got to play that. And the other thing here is that they're palm muted. So in thrash metal, there aren't too many palm muted rhythms like this that are super fast. They don't do that, right? They open it up. So of course there's a lot of palm muted notes. Like Dave Mustaine plays palm muted notes, you know, of course Metallica. So thrash is, so let me clarify here. Thrash is, when you think about it from that kind of perspective, thrash is all palm mute. What I'm saying is that they don't play 16 notes that are palm muted. So all these notes right here are palm muted. Starting here. Right? And then you'll find a lot of similarities. This is what death metal gets criticism, because it all kind of sounds the same. Like I played here. Or like another rhythm like this. Basically, it's every song is like this. So that's, you know, backed up by basically, you know, like a fast skank beat, right? But it's that right tempo where it just fits these 16th notes in, right? So if you listen to like Deicide, they use a lot of these 16th notes, right? We're going to call them 16 notes because to me, that's the most accurate description, right? It's not 60-second notes, or it's not, you know, 30-second notes or 64th notes, or, you know, right? So we're going to call them the 16th notes. So you can hear it a lot in like Deicide, of course, Death, you can hear it. So every time that there's like a rhythm section, you'll hear this. And then also, you know, Cannibal Corpse, right? All these bands basically use them. So that's one of the fundamental differences between the two camps, between thrash and here, is that you have palm muted 16th notes. So sometimes what will happen is that you can put a skank beat to it. You can go like this right here is that. Right? Or this is what I call crawling on a dime, right? You can crawl on a dime and still play 16 notes. Like kind of like leprosy, right? And then he goes. I forgot it already. So that right there, right? So you can just be like, so it's not even that. It'll just be like, it'll sort of be like this. Right? It's a beat like that. And it's not fast. Oh, it's that note right there. Anyway, so you can crawl on a dime, as we talk about, or you can play the skank beat behind it. So those are some of the preliminary uses for it. I don't know if anybody puts a blast beat behind it. I suppose it's possible as well. So that's one of the staple rhythms here. And like I said, the fundamental unit is 4 notes. So you just reuse that. Within Leprosy, within Scream Bloody Gore, it's reused like a bunch of times. So don't think about it as this is the difference between thrash and death. Thrash guys think about it as like, they're, you know what I mean? It's like a musical snobbiness almost. They carry that goofiness from the 80s. It's a bit of a musical snobbiness, right? Where death metal, right? We're just interested in just, having just like a sick sound, right? And then it's palm muted. So even in this right here, right? So you've got to get used to that. If you want to play like this, you've got to get used to just playing 16 notes in 1 second. 1,000. I just played 16 notes. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, right? If I were to only play 8 notes, it'll sound like this. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So you'd have to space it out more. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I can't really do it because it's more like, then you have to kind of, down pick it, right? So 16 notes, it's almost like a, so it's this one right here. This is the most, I'll play it, first I'll play it with the, and then I'll play all 16 notes. All of them. And the weirdest thing is, I'll tell you, my whole life, since I was 17, right? I've been trying to communicate that beat to people in the Bay Area, and they still don't get it. So that's the point here, is that you see now, I'll kind of, talk about like the band philosophy, but that's the thing here, is that you won't really find people who are in tune with you. I would love to turn my band, Plutocratic Denial, as it's called now, into a real band, right? But you'll never find people like this who can never, who can't play this. And I would even, spell it out for them just like I'm spelling it out for you now. Just put this beat in there. And they still won't get it. And they'll be like, dude, we don't know. I'm like, it's the punk beat. It's the, right? It's the skank beat. The word skank beat, I think it's like a newer kind of term that came from, recent times, because in the Bay Area, they don't call it the skank beat. So supposedly that beat, it's the polka beat. So this is why Paul Bostaph calls it, the Bay Area polka, right? It's that polka beat is the basic punk beat. Then you just speed that up, and as you speed it up, then it becomes like a blast beat later on. That's the, but this right here, because, remember the band Death doesn't use a blast beat. So this is right before that, and as I mentioned to you before, it finds that right tempo where these 16-note rhythms fit in perfectly. So anyway. Or even Slayer, I don't think they somehow managed to capture this the right way. Right? Now, a lot of these patterns, if you listen to Rain and Blood, you'll hear a lot of that, I don't know how to play it, but, like in, well, you hear these patterns like this, like I said. But not in that format, though. It doesn't sound like death metal, but it kind of sounds kind of like, those kind of 4-note patterns, right? So the problem there is that they stopped right before it got like real sick. But it paved the way for, other bands to be like, oh, wait, we can just take that Rain and Blood and then we can kind of run with it. Where the next album, they had already kind of slowed down consciously. Kerry King said that South of Heaven, they consciously slowed down and said, we want to do something different. Right? The guys from Cannibal Corpse had originally stated that once you have a blueprint like Rain and Blood, why would you change it? And they couldn't figure it out, they said, when it came out. When South of Heaven came out, they were just like, why would you change that format? Because it's like you have a formula that works. Why not just keep going that way? So that's what the death metal aesthetic is. So a lot of that, like I said, it was developing, and then Slayer really helped it along with Rain and Blood, I think, which is aggression from beginning to end. But still, their rhythms are different. Their rhythms are different. It took someone like Chuck Schuldiner to come in here and be like, oh wait, we can do this. And then all palm muted too. So that's what makes it sick. Don't forget the palm mute here. So palm muted 16th note patterns, right? Rhythm patterns that are just the a bread and butter of basically death metal. And you'll just hear this everywhere. And again, it all kind of sounds the same, but that's okay, right? Um, you'll usually hear it in like you'll hear like melodic structure, which death metal has, obviously. Even the band, Death, they has a lot of melodic structure, and then you just kind of let loose, and that's when you use this. So I guess I'm giving away songwriting secrets here. So I use this in that my one of my songs. So check it out. I'll put it up as the first link, and then yeah, I should be good to go. Once I get the double bass pedal, let me get that tomorrow. I'll put it in. The reason I wanted the double bass, I've been wanting to pull the trigger on this for a long time, but there's all these sort of auxiliary things that like, okay, you could go this way, or you could, buy the Roland part, which costs like almost as much as the kit. And then I found out that compatibility. So I bought like a Yamaha kickstand and then a double bass pedal separate. So the kickstand is going to be like this, and the beater is going to be like this on the side, and it's like actual double bass pedal, right? So this should increase my playing ability by a lot. For those of you who don't know, I do everything myself here. So I'm basically I actually sing in a standalone Sabbath band. As a standalone singer, I sing in a Sabbath band. So I love to do that. A note on that is we just can't find a drummer. I mean, there's like literally 10 million people in this area, but we can't find a drummer. You know, either they don't like the fact that I'm Indian, or they're looking for like an Aussie clone, or they're like, well, you already have to be established, right? Nobody just wants to kind of do it for fun. So, still searching for it. If we find the right, drummer, it'll probably happen. We have a guitar player, me, the singer, and then a bass player. So, usually you can't find the bass player. Now we got a bass player. Now we can't find the drummer. So anyway, uh, right. So this should also help me with a lot of other things. Just recording this death metal song is also helping me kind of, it helped me configure the drums, and then it helped me kind of, uh, I was kind of hesitant to get a double bass pedal, because once you get it, because I used to play drums, right? So once you get a double bass pedal, you start relying on that for everything. And you can't play with like a single pedal, because, you want to put in that double like every single time. So you have to resist that temptation. Like, for example, Black Sabbath, right, doesn't use double bass pedals. Iron Maiden doesn't use it. So I was kind of like thinking, oh wait, what if I lose that ability to just play, with like a single kick? Just like John Bonham, right? He hated double bass because for what he was doing, he could do everything single, right? Single bass. So anyway, but for death metal, I think you almost have to have it, even the band Death. So I'm basically going to use it for those patterns where it's like the double bass is going like this, and then the snare is just like those type of rhythms, and things like that. You know what I mean? And having a real kick instead of the one that came with the kit, this should actually stabilize my foot more, so that I'll be able to get these beats more precise, hopefully. Right? Because the one that the beater that it comes with the pedal that they give you, right? It's just kind of like, it's not really a double bass pedal. It's kind of like a hokey kind of thing, right? Anyway, guys. So yeah, unfortunately, I lost my job, as you know, on Monday. So I don't know. In the beginning, it was like I was like, yeah, that's cool. I don't really care, but of course you care, and it kind of eats you up, and I'm just like kind of bummed out, and I swear to God, like probably a dozen times, right? I'll be in the bathroom and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta make sure I move the mouse so that they know I'm still working, so that it doesn't time out on Slack. And I'm like, oh shit, you don't have a job, bro. You don't have to worry about that shit. Like I caught myself doing that like about probably more than a dozen times where like I'm doing something and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about Slack. I gotta, right? Because they know that you're working based on your status on Slack. So, right, you can't go away from it too far because it's just habit based on, the last year of working. So, and I'm like, oh wait, I gotta, it's just this feeling right here, right? It's like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be doing something right now. And it takes me about half a second to be like, oh wait, it's supposed to be working. And then it takes me about another half a second to be like, oh shit, I don't have a job. So, I'm trying to get, I mean, there's nothing I can do. So I've applied for a lot of jobs, but anyway, I mean, who knows? Last time I was unemployed for 2.5 years. And then I was employed again for a year. Now I'm unemployed again. So I don't know. Hopefully maybe things have changed. Like I said, this is the worst time to be, not have a job because this is, you're competing with all the new grads because, they just graduated, right? So summertime is the worst time. Also because all these jobs are written up in a way where they don't require too much experience. It'll just say 5+. So 5+ means it could be 5, it could be 6, right? Or sometimes it could even be less than 5 with like a couple of internships and right, a PhD or something. I don't know. So literally what that means is anyone can apply for these jobs, even though it's a senior position. So this means that, you're competing with a lot of people. So anyway, that's the status. I'm still that's why I didn't do that other video. Partly because that Motorhead video didn't come out well. So again, I'm not pivoting completely to death metal yet or anything else like that. I just thought I would kind of talk about this. So do check out, like I said, my song, what's come out, what I put out so far. I will put the link out there. And then once I get the double bass pedal, I'll probably do another song on next week. Probably some aspects of Blast Beat as well, I think. Maybe some aspects of Cannibal Corpse because I don't want to say it's all going to sound like that, but some aspects of it. If you hear this song, The Oppressions of Life, that final part that almost sounds like a blast beat, right? That wasn't supposed to come out that fast. So, but I kind of made a mistake, and then later on I realized that, oh wait, that's kind of like almost like a semi-blast beat. So we might have hints of that here and there. Yeah. But I don't think we're going to be talking about Satanism and ripping people apart. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 songs like that, but not like, like the whole thing. You know what I mean? Mostly it'll be kind of like a Napalm Death kind of approach. We may actually have like 30-minute, 30-second songs, 30-minute, 30-second songs. We may have like, minute and a half for sure, right? Those quick kind of songs. There's no reason a song needs to be 5 minutes unless it's like an epic. That song that I put on there, I think that I'm going to work on last because that song needs to be like 5 minutes because it already has a lot of parts. So that's a song that'll be 5 minutes for sure. But there'll also be like quicker songs, I think. So, yeah, it cost me about $160 to get this set up. Basically, a double bass tower pad that plugs into my existing kit, which is sensitive to, it's like a round pad. And then the pedal itself, which cost me about $80. I could have went, I used to have the Iron Cobra a long time ago. A lot of that stuff, I think I don't know what happened to it. I left it somewhere that, it got stolen or it got, maybe I gave it away to somebody. I think I gave it away, yeah. Did I give it away to a church? I think I left it there in San Jose. And then I told, my wife's church friends. We're not Christian. We don't go to church or anything, but I'm just saying, somebody who she knew and then said, oh, wait, we'll just donate it to the church. You can pawn it or whatever you want because there was no room for it here. It was like a real kit, right? So anyway, that's the thing here. 16th note rhythms that you can use, and that forms the kind of the, a lot of the rhythm patterns, right? Even if you take like Damage Incorporated, they're not playing 16 notes. They're playing like, 12 notes per, in 1 second, right? So this is a learned skill. I think Slayer might occasionally do it. like in Kill Again, right? That's what I said. That's almost all these rhythms sound like that. Like Kill Again. That song, right? There's a part in there that goes. I think I'm playing it wrong. But anyway, that kind of rhythm, death metal is just riddled with that. Death metal saw that and said, "Oh shit, we could go town. We could go to town with that." So there's a lot of these 16th note patterns that sound very similar to that. Right? They also have those in like Reign in Blood. So anyway, Slayer is obviously a big influence, I think, which kind of spawned all this. But then Slayer doesn't go like super slow in a way like like Celtic Frost does. So it's kind of like death metal is like if you take Venom, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer, and then the harder aspects of thrash like Possessed, and then right, Slayer, right, and then you kind of put it all together. Cannibal Corpse to me sounds a lot like just like Slayer, right, with like the blast beat, and then to where it's just kind of relentlessly not giving up and just kind of just like that, right. So anyway, um, that's all I have to say. So yeah, I mean, it can seem like, I guess my final note here would be, it can seem like it's harder to play, right? Because it's like right? It can seem like it's harder to play, but that's why you have to gut the mids a little bit, right? And Marshall specifically isn't a good amp for this because it's mid heavy, so it usually doesn't allow this kind of fast picking. I think for bands like Death used Marshall the first two albums, I believe, Scream Bloody Gore and then Leprosy, and then he moved on to Valve State, Marshall Valve State, and then I think even other bands, they've used different amps because Marshall tends to be, maybe it's probably not great for this kind of stuff. 16 note patterns, right? Right, you need something a little bit more fluid, a little bit more allowing. A lot of people, this is why they go to like Mesa Boogie, like Metallica did, for Mesa Boogie, for Master Puppets. So, I think Jack Owen from Cannibal Corpse, I think he played like a solid state crate, right? And then Mesa Boogie. So people use different things according to their style of playing. And then, so things like strings help out, things like, right? Different things help out. Supposedly, Chuck Shuldiner used, GHS boomer strings, which is what Tony Iommi used. So I might actually, see, I used to put that on my SG. I might actually put that on here. I don't know. Because they kind of have an elasticity to them. So I don't know. They don't sound like, they don't feel like any of these other strings. Right here, I don't know. I had to sort of go on like Fender strings, I think, here, because I just had a pack. I lost like one string. So I want to go back to, Diodero on this, which will sort of change it completely. Anyway, guys, I will talk to you soon.